welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, we're going to dive into what happens after the scene ends. I'm not talking about the physical come down, but the emotional one, the quiet that actually follows the intensity, the distance that sneaks in after closeness. Now, if you have been following along and you read my latest writing, Touch Me, Don't Hold Me, you'll know that it explored the tension between craving connection and fearing being held. That whole moment when your body says yes, but your heart still remembers why yes once felt dangerous. The feedback that I received from that piece was really powerful. It showed me how many people live in that space, wanting to stay but not knowing how. So I wanted to take this conversation a little further here because what happens after the touch often reveals more about us than what happens during it. Now, before we get into it, I want to do what I always do, and I want to thank everybody who keeps showing up for these conversations, who keeps bringing me these questions. Whether you're new or you've been listening for a while, your support means a lot. Berlin, I hear you. Reykjavik, thank you for. I wanted to make sure that I got a little shout out to Iceland today. A couple of you over there were telling me how you listen in a pub. I appreciate that. If I ever make it up there, I'll be sure to come by. And a couple of you, the rest of you around the world, thank you for your questions, your support. It really does mean a lot. You can like, follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. If you follow me on Spotify, do me a favor, rate the show 5 stars if you're on the app. This helps keep the conversation moving forward. It allows other people to find these conversations, and it really kind of keeps everything moving forward. If you want to keep or support my show and support the work I do, there is a donation link in the show's description. Every little bit helps. Now, let's talk about what really happens when everything slows down. When the rush of that connection fades and the body starts to come back to itself. Now, for many, that's the moment of peace they've been waiting for. For others, it's when the fear hits, the urge to move, to make a joke, to change the subject, to find a way out. It's strange how the quiet can feel louder than the scene itself. So today, we're going to talk about that moment. The drop, the silence, the sudden pull towards distance, why it happens, what it means, and how we can start to hold ourselves and each other when the connection feels like too much. So settle in, take a breath, and let's start there. So first here, what I want to do is I want to bridge from the writing. When I wrote Touch Me, Don't Hold Me, I wanted to capture that contradiction that so many people live in, that craving to be touched and the panic that follows once the body gets what it asked for. It's easy to talk about avoidance like it's just distance or indifference, but that's not what it is. Avoidance is the body's way of saying, I remember what happened last time I let someone stay. What we didn't get to explore in the writing is what actually happens next, what the drop feels like when the scene ends and the body begins to settle. For some, the drop isn't only physical, it's emotional, chemical, even spiritual. And when the adrenaline starts to fade, the breath slows down a little bit, the protective guard that held everything together begins to slip. What was structured and safe a few minutes ago suddenly feels uncertain. The mind rushes in to fill the silence with questions. Did I go too far? Did I say too much? What were they thinking? Right? The body that felt strong and connected during the scene can feel shaky and exposed afterward. That's the part many people don't talk about, the invisible hangover that comes from vulnerability. Now, avoidant people often describe this as confusion or guilt. The guilt for leaving too quickly, for going quiet, or for needing space after what was just shared. There's a voice that whispers, why can't I just stay present? Why can't I enjoy what I say I want? And that's where self-blame begins, because avoidance doesn't come without cost. It protects, but it also isolates everybody. Every retreat builds another layer between you and the safety you're trying to find. And for the partner on the other side, it's easy to take that retreat personally. They see it as rejection or disinterest when often it's just grief. It's the avoidance quiet mourning for the safety that slipped away too soon. The connection felt real for a moment, and then the body remembered it can't trust that feeling to last. And what looks like distance is somehow sorrow that closeness never gets to stay or stick around. This is where understanding matters. There's a difference between needing space and abandoning connection, right? Space can be part of the repair. It gives breathing room, time to regulate, and to come back with a clear head. Abandonment, though, leaves the other person stranded in uncertainty. That boundary, the one between healthy space and emotional absence, is where relational safety is defined. It's where communication either strengthens or collapses. And if you're an avoidant personality, learning to name the need for space before disappearing can actually change everything. If you're the partner, hearing that request without turning it into a rejection builds trust. Both sides are trying to feel safe, just in opposite ways. So, as we move through today's episode, I want you to hold that tension in mind. Avoidance isn't lack of care, it's care wrapped in fear. And when the scene ends and the quiet begins, that's where both people start to learn what safety actually means. So let's talk about the drop and the nervous system. I want to move from emotion into the body, because what we call the drop isn't just a mood swing or the moment of sadness. It's a biological sequence it's a shift inside of your body that every time your body transitions from intensity back to calm. During a scene or a relationship, especially something that's very intense, your system releases powerful cocktails of neurochemicals. Adrenaline heightens your awareness, it sharpens your focus, keeps your body prepared. Dopamine adds excitement and reward, feeling that feeling of satisfaction and momentum. Oxytocin flows when there's connection or trust, creating the sense of closeness that often feels so grounding in relationships or inside of the lifestyle. Every cell is tuned in. The body feels alive again, aligned, and sure of what it's doing. However, the structure then ends. If the dynamic closes and the body begins to change gears, adrenaline drains out, dopamine fades, and oxytocin remains high for a little while before it tapers off. This is where cortisol comes in, the stress hormone. It briefly rises as your system checks to make sure that the intensity is really over. The chemical mix creates what we call drop. It's a crash. Yes, but you can also look at it as a recalibration. Your nervous system is asking, are we still safe? Is it okay to rest? Do I need to prepare for something else? Now, for someone with an avoidant pattern, that question feels like danger. Stillness doesn't feel neutral, it feels like exposure. And what's really interesting about this is that I've been working with somebody that doesn't know how to sit still, who doesn't know how to relax, that if they have to be in constant motion. Because if they're not in constant motion, they feel like the world around them is going to crash, right? So, even in part of working with them, having them just take 10 minutes a week to sit and do nothing is how you learn to repair your system over time, to say that being calm can be safe, right? And this is the very calm your body is trying to reach, right? But as you're trying to reach for it, it becomes the very thing you're trying to resist. The silence after the connection can feel like a void, so the mind races to fill it. And that's when you see people make jokes, or they're going to clean the room, start scrolling their phone, but they need to move. Now, those aren't signs of indifference. They're attempts to manage a system that doesn't trust the quiet. And when you've lived through trauma or inconsistent closeness, the body learns that peace is temporary, and the nervous system stays half ready for the next hit of chaos. It remembers that stillness once meant pain was coming. So even when things are fine, the body doesn't relax. It anticipates. That's why the drop can feel so heavy. That's why people mistake it for rejection or emotional coldness. And this is where awareness matters. The drop isn't a failure or some sort of form of weakness. It's biology doing its job. It's understanding that understanding that changes everything. It turns self-blame into curiosity and shame into care. And you can prepare for it, you can name it, and you can respond to it with steadiness instead of panic. And aftercare can actually fit into this process, but it isn't the whole solution. Gentle grounding, warmth, hydration, soft conversations, those are tools that help the body learn that intensity can fade without loss. Outside of relationships or a scene, regulation can help build through things like sleep, eating, normalize your eating habits, pacing yourself, or even slowing the rhythm of your day. The goal here is not to avoid the drop, but to meet it with care so the body starts to believe that the calm can be safe. That's the real healing here, teaching your nervous system that connection doesn't have to cost you safety, and that rest isn't really a threat. It's proof that you can survive the storm. But we do have another side to this, and this is what I call the partner's reality. Now, a lot of people wrote that after they read the Touch Me, Don't Hold Me, what it feels like to be on the other side of that retreat. They weren't the avoidant one, they were the ones left in quiet, waiting, wondering, and trying to understand what the hell just happened. And their stories shared the same theme: confusion mixed with hurt and ambiguity. The partner they felt so close to minutes ago suddenly felt completely unreachable. And it's hard not to take that personally. And it's even harder not to start doubting your own sense of connection. So when someone you care about pulls away, your nervous system reacts too. It doesn't matter how grounded you think you are, that sudden loss of attunement stirs panic. And you start replaying the last thing you said, you search for clues, you ask yourselves what did I do wrong? Then you move from closeness to survival thinking in seconds. And for the partner, this is where self-regulation becomes its own kind of discipline. And what I see often most is that people either chase or they shut down. Now, chasing comes from fear, the need to close the gap, to prove the connection is still there. And it sounds like, hey, are you mad? Did I do something wrong? Or, the ever present, just talk to me. The problem is chasing only makes the avoidant retreat further. The nervous system that's already on alert reads pursuit as pressure. And on the other hand, shutting down or pulling back in silence can look like self-protection, but it often deepens the distance, and both sides end up feeling unseen, even though both people are hurting. There's a middle path here, though, and that's what I call emotional pacing. It's the practice of holding steadiness when the other person starts to wobble. Now, instead of pushing or disappearing, you stay consistent. And I know that can be difficult, and it's going to require a lot, but you need to give space without withdrawing your care. And it might sound something like this: I can see you need a little room, so I'm here when you're ready. That sentence alone can start to build safety because it communicates calm. It says, I'm not abandoning you, but I'm not going to chase you either. And believe it or not, therapists use this with their clients. We say this because sometimes we have to let people come back to us, or our partners come back to us when they're ready. And that allows us to know it's not a rejection of us. It's just them trying to steady their systems, right? Now, for the partner, learning to manage your own anxiety in those moments is part of the work. It means noticing your impulse to want to fix things and resisting it. It means grounding yourself in your own body, slowing down your breathing, and letting the silence be uncomfortable without assuming the worst, or even more so, assuming you're the problem or you're the issue. The voidant isn't punishing you, they're protecting themselves from a feeling they can't hold yet. And when you see that, empathy can replace confusion. Now, I'm not saying any of this is easy. It takes practice and patience and repeated experiences of repair. But each time you stay steady instead of spiraling, you teach both your system and theirs that distance doesn't have to mean disconnection. You model safety in the exact moment their body is trying to find it. That's the quiet power of the partner's role, being the calm in the space where someone else is still learning that closeness doesn't have to hurt. Now, I want to talk about repair and integration here, right? Because repair doesn't have to happen in one conversation or even in one relationship. It happens through repetition. Safety is taught through what's predictable, not through what's intense. The nervous system doesn't learn through theory. It learns through experience and practice, through what it keeps happening again and again until the body starts to believe it. For someone who's avoidant, that means practicing small exposures to closeness without running from them. It's not about forcing yourself to stay when it feels unbearable. It's about staying a few seconds longer than you usually do. And then you might notice the impulse to pull away right after intimacy or even a deep conversation. But in that moment, take a breath. Don't fight the instinct, just delay it. Let your system realize that nothing bad happens when you pause. Those seconds are where regulation starts to build. And naming the discomfort helps too. Say it out loud. You know, I feel the urge to pull back right now, but I'm okay. It brings awareness into what usually is automatic. Now, the body can't heal what it doesn't recognize, and that small act of naming it begins to turn the fear into choice. And for partners, repair also looks like gentle consistency. It means responding to the distance with steadiness rather than panic and learning to trust that the slow pace of connection, right? And that it's going to be okay. You don't have to convince the avoidant person that you're safe. You just have to keep showing it. And when you respond to retreat with calm, when you hold your ground without closing off, their nervous system slowly learns that safety doesn't vanish with time or silence. Grounding rituals help here. They bridge the gap between the body and the mind. After a scene, right? Try a touch that's simple and stable. Maybe just hold hands, some steady breathing, or maybe even just something as simple as making a cup of tea together. These small actions teach the body that intensity can end softly, and over time, they become cues that the storm is over and connection can still exist. And that's what a lot of people don't seem to understand. And you partners, if you are dating somebody that is avoidant, you need to understand that they need reassurance, not for the sake of the reassurance itself, but because their nervous system doesn't know any other way. And that's not their fault and it's not yours. But if you're going to work through a relationship or a dynamic together, these are some of the things you have to be prepared for. Now, I often compare this whole process to learning a rhythm again after losing your balance, right? You don't try to dance your way back to it all at once. You take one slow step and you take your next one until your body remembers all of the timing. So the same is true for emotional regulation. You rebuild trust one moment at a time, not by leaping into vulnerability, but by proving that you can survive the stillness that follows it. And that's what we do. That's what I do. Repair is never, ever about perfection. It's about repetition. So each time you stay when you would normally run, each time you respond calmly instead of collapsing, your body learns something new. And safety stops being a theory and becomes a memory. And that's when connection, the real, grounded, lasting connection that all of us want, finally starts to feel like home instead of a risk. And I think that's one thing that for avoidance they're searching for, but they don't know how to recognize. And so it's really difficult for them. It's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses here. Let me be clear on that, right? I don't excuse behavior, I help explain it. But if you are dating someone who's working through and learning to move from avoidant, anxious, attachment to secure, it's going to take them time. And if you want to be that person, you have to be prepared to do some work. Now, when I ended that my touch me, don't hold me, and I ended it with the idea that being held doesn't have to hurt. That line was meant to remind us that closeness isn't about danger. It's the memory of what once happened inside closeness that makes it feel that way. So today, this whole conversation has been about what comes after that moment, about how learning how to stay when every part of you wants to leave. Now, avoidance teaches protection, but it also teaches distance. It keeps you alive, but it doesn't let us live fully. So the work isn't to erase the instinct, it's to reshape it, to teach your body that quiet can be safe, that stillness doesn't equal loss, and that you don't have to earn connection by controlling it. Healing starts there, in the small pauses where you resist the urge to retreat and give safety a chance to settle in. But I'm not going to lie, it's going to take a lot of work. So if you take nothing else away from this episode today, let it be this. Safety is built in repetition, not revelation. It's not found in the intensity, but in the gentle return and the moments where you come down, where you breathe and realize you can still feel okay inside the quiet. That's how the nervous system learns to trust again. So, as I always do, I have a question for you to sit and think with. And I do. I really want you to sit and think. Every week, I ask you all a question. Some of you respond. Some of you sit with it quietly. Some of you email me, right? But I want you to, I give you these questions because when you ask me how to grow, when you ask me how to change, this is part of the free stuff that I'm giving to you. So take stock in this, right? Here's my question this week in relation to all of this. When closeness starts to feel uncomfortable, are you protecting yourself from danger or from the possibility that it could finally be safe? And that's going to be the real hard question to answer or ask yourself. And what might be scarier is what's going to be the answer to that question. Right? This is by no means a very small topic I'm on, especially with avoidant personalities. And I think over the coming weeks, but heading towards Christmas or maybe towards the end of the year, I'll write some more stuff on avoidant attachment. Right? I try not to flood too much at once because I don't want people to get lost in too many different things, because I do write a lot. Again, let me let you real quickly. I am on the mend. I'm still a little bit congested, but I'm getting there. Week 3 now. I'm starting my healing process. There's a cough for you all. Still believe I'm sick. I'm getting there. Right? Appreciate it. I feel all the well wishes. I thank you. Somebody sent me a really nice recipe for some soup, so I am going to say to that person from the Mediterranean, thank you. I actually made your soup this past weekend, and it was amazing. I'm sure not as amazing as authentic as I could get there. What country doesn't matter, but for the person who sent me the recipe, thank you. I tried, and I tell you what, it was really good. and I could actually taste something. Um, all right. Couple things. First, I'll keep promoting my book because, I'm supposed to, and I have no more book shame, as someone told me not to have. So I won't shame myself. I do have a book out there. It is called Tangled Desires, The Intersection Between Psychology and BDSM. It's a good book, right? It's a little repetitious, but it's going to give you some foundations if you're new. It's going to explain some concepts to you. It's a little bit clinical, but, hey, it was my first book, right? It's not very expensive. You can get it wherever you get your ebooks from. You can buy a hard copy, I think, through places like Amazon or wherever else you get your books from. I do have. We're gonna move into your famous now because I got quite a few people who seem to be riled with me. God forbid I actually got sick, but apparently they took me getting sick as some sort of joke. I don't really even get that one. But one person said that I was pretending to be sick to gain sympathy so I could gain more followers because being sick somehow promotes the fact that I need more people to care about. I don't even get this. Why would I want to be sick? Why would I want to sound sick? I don't know anybody who likes being ill, let alone having bronchitis or pneumonia or COVID or the flu or anything else. Nobody wants to be sick. So, this by and large is the dumbest comment that I've heard in a while. I don't want to be sick. I'm definitely not looking for sympathy, right? If I was, I'd beg more people to email me and do that. As a matter of fact, I've done the opposite, right? Now, somebody else. Now, these are, I haven't encountered this one before either. People wanting to know why I don't do a lot of friendships or take your friendships online. So let me be very clear about that. If I haven't really met you, and I'm kind of a private person, but if I haven't met you, and I haven't really interacted with you, I'm, it's hard for me to say friend. Friends are somebody I take seriously, right? Um, However, for some of the popular people that are popular is, I guess, a loose term, but for some of the bigger social media people that are on places like Instagram or Fetlife or other social media places, and you're friending me and you're saying in your email that I should accept it because it'll boost whatever I'm doing, you miss the entire context of what I'm doing here. This for me isn't about gaining followers. I don't look at that stuff. I think the last time I thanked everybody, I'd hit like 7,000 followers or 6,000. I really don't know. But quite honestly, when I've looked where I'm at, I'm very thankful. But none of that means anything to me because it's about the work. So being friends with you, why I rejected you, and then why you got mad at me, and why you told me you're going to now tell people not to follow my work, that tells me you're not original. And furthermore, it just kind of says that you're on social media for clout. I'm not here for that. I'm also not here to let others like ride my coattails, and I'm not looking to ride theirs. You do you, and I'm going to do me. But if you think that somehow you're going to like weirdly cancel me because I don't want to be friends, first off, I've never been to that part of the country, so good luck with that. Um, as a matter of fact, I haven't lived in the US for like over a decade. So I hate to tell you, if you go out and tell people, hey, yeah, I saw Chris this weekend, probably not going to be true. Because most people see me like if I'm in Seoul, when I'm in Singapore, other places in the Pacific, I'm not going to name, right? Maybe when I was down in Buenos Aires, I don't know. But I'm definitely not in the States right now. So if you go and tell people that, you're going to be lying. I just don't get it. And let me be very clear about this. I'm not doing this for social media clout. I don't care about that. There are some really famous psychologists, people whose work in trauma that I totally respect and who I follow because I think they have something to teach. Some with 40, 50 years of experience. Now, some of them have moved on and they've started creating books and they're retiring from their practice, so they're making the work not so much about their work anymore, it's about them. That's fine. That's them. But I do this for the work because my primary function is I work with veterans. And I work 5 days a week, 3 hours a day. So the only time I don't make it to work with them is when I'm sick. Other than that, I work almost, I don't know, 340 days a year, 330 days a year doing free work with veterans. It's a lot. A lot of my life is dedicated to that work. So it's not about a flash in the pants. I don't do this for that, right? Because if I start making this about me, you're not going to know why you came here in the first place. You're going to be more worried about what cup of coffee I drink, the newest clothes, where I'm traveling, or what I'm promoting. And I'm not about that. Okay. So to you, Julie in the sky, Jewel in the sky, I'm not very interested. But thanks. Appreciate it. Right. It doesn't mean a whole lot. There was another, which was quite interesting. Couldn't really understand it, but whatever. Oh, the first guy. Sorry, I didn't have some sort of pithy kind of name for him, but that's okay. I don't really need to all the time. Um, Also, I'm going to be very clear on this. I don't mind working with organizations, but there was an organization that contacted me to do some free work. I'm typically fine with that, but I'm just going to say this particular leather organization, where they are in the world doesn't really matter. When If your organization wants my help and I'm fine, I'll come in and talk for 15 or 20 minutes and I'll do it. I'll talk about relationships or consent. But let me be very clear. If what you're saying and how I feel are diametrically opposed, we're not going to have a conversation. I'm not going to entertain a conversation. That's fine. I'm not telling you what you can say. You all can believe what you want to believe. You can follow politics, whatever you want, religion, all of that. That's all on you. But if it's diametrically opposed to what I believe, I will not be a part of it. That's it. And I'm just going to tell you I'm not interested. I don't owe anybody an explanation. None of you owe me explanations, right? So keep that in mind. I don't owe people anything. I provide all this work. I provide everything I do for you all. I remember there's 8 worksheets that I give away, which currently have over almost 4,000 downloads on all the worksheets I give away. I do that so this community can have resources, right, that aren't behind paywalls, that people think that um, there has to be something attached, because there's nothing attached. Now, the last person today, right, the person from the Netherlands, I don't even remember where he's at. I think I blocked him. Can't really remember. Ah, yes, I found him. The dark Skittles is what I'm going to call them, right? If you know what Skittles are, you'll know. But Dark Skittles got mad because yet again, here's somebody else commenting on my writing who says that all I'm doing this is to pawn off for money. Let me be very clear. All of my writing, this show, all of the resources, all of my free talks, they're done for free. I have to pay for those things by working. For some of you to find a therapist, we have to go to school. We have to get licensed. We have to have insurance. So, yeah, I'm going to put my services up there because you know what? That's part of the deal. Doesn't mean you have to like employ me. Maybe you don't need a therapist at all. But stop getting mad at me because I'm trying to support my life, right? And by the way, you're not even you're like 20 something years old or 30 barely 30 something years old. Man, I read through your profile. You are a walking red flag. But that's okay. I've only been doing this almost longer than you've been alive. You know, I think there's gonna be some new things coming out. Let me get to that. I want to get away from You're Famous now. So yeah, those are the few people this week. Um, there is a series I want to do, or something I want to start getting into, and I want to start talking about the older generations. And I am talking about people who've actually been in kink for plus 15 years compared to those people that are in kink now. And why is it? I want to do a cross comparison between why is it that older generations, or people who just have history and traction in the lifestyle, seem to have, for the most part, less consent violations and less issues overall than the newer generations. Now, obviously, this is not this is not the rule, right? But for the most part, it seems to be. But there are always exceptions to that rule, kind of like what happened down in Florida. I spoke about that at the beginning of the year with the dude who owned the dungeon, who found it to be his personal sexual assault playground, right? Those things are more of the exception, and I believe they're more rare. I don't really hear as many of these instances with older people that have massive history in the lifestyle. Maybe I'm wrong. Look, I haven't been around every part of this planet. I think I've only explored about 22% of it. It's not a lot, right? But I tend to see the bigger confluence of newer people. So that doesn't just mean young. I don't care really about your age range, but anybody who's got 5 years or less, when you're merging so many things inside of kink and then the violations are coming in. So I'm going to put something together. It might ruffle some feathers, but you all know that doesn't really bother me. So, that's what I'm here. I want to have hard conversations because we need to talk about these things. We need to talk about why so many people have turned kink into just kinky sex, right? BDSM is slowly dying out. You all don't believe me, but it doesn't take much to look around these places like Collar Me or Fetish.com or even places like Fetlife. It's not about BDSM. And look, everybody still thinks I have a problem with swingers or poly people or E&M people. I really don't. They are just different lifestyles, and they got merged. They came in. These groups all came in. And when you bring your different consent structures into something that has a massive consent structure like BDSM, those lifestyles are going to be diametrically opposed to each other, right? I've covered this before. And if you think I'm wrong, talk to me about it. But I'm very happy to challenge and discuss this, and we can have a really good conversation about it, right? On a different front, I will let you know I did get approached to having my show sponsored by somebody. Obviously, it's just paid advertising for my show. However, that deal was rejected because, again, what people stand for, and I'm going to have to be behind something. You want to pay me? That doesn't. I have principles, right? There is a reason I do this show by myself, because at the end of the day, the more people that get involved with what I do, it changes everybody's got an agenda, and no one's going to mess up what I'm doing, because that way I'm keeping it pure. So for a couple of the companies that have reached out, I'd love to work with you, but we just have different views on things, and that's okay, right? It doesn't mean I'm still not looking for a sponsor. I'd love to have a show sponsor. So if you're looking, you've got a business, you want me to promote it, we can talk, right? Keeps this show going. Right now, I'm just paying for it from my practice. So, anyways, I've spoken enough, rambled on. Let me know what you thought about today. For you avoidance out there, I want you to start sitting with this uncomfortableness. And for the partners that have entered a relationship with somebody who happens to be an avoidant, it's not personal. Containment, safety. Don't look at their retreat as something against you. Okay? Let me know what you think about all this. Comment section below. Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, everybody, be safe, stay kinky.